Hi, my name is Evyn Mitchell. I'm the Public Affairs and Communications Manager for the four Columbia Corridor Drainage Districts, Levy Ready Columbia, and the new Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District. Thank you so much for your interest in what we're referring to as our Communications On-Call RFP. Before I start, I want to apologize and note a couple of things. If I'm looking off to the right, it's because I have a screen up there and I am looking at the slides that I am talking about. I also want to note that there is a little bit of construction noise in the background and that it is making my desk sort of jump up and down a little bit. Unfortunately, those are the perils of working at home during a pandemic, and we still wanted to move forward and get this video up for folks. So with that, I'm going to get started. So in this video, I'm going to cover a little bit about the drainage districts and the history of the area, a little bit about our effort to transition to the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District and consolidate all of the districts together. Some of what we hope to accomplish with this RFP, and then I'll talk about the service categories within the RFP. So beginning at with the background and history of the area. So the drainage districts are located in the area along the Columbia River, basically from the confluence with the Willamette on the west and the confluence with the Sandy on the east. This area was historically a natural floodplain that flooded seasonally. And for many generations, the area was visited by indigenous people for hunting, fishing, gathering, and travel and trade. Later, when the city of Portland was being built and white folks were really settling in the area, there was an interest in further developing this land. Here on this map, you can see this is 1905. The city of Portland is really starting to take its present form, but the area along the river is still represented by sort of series of lakes and channels and the slough running all along the river. It wasn't until 1917 when farmers in the area, farmers and local business interests decided to form the four drainage districts that exist today. And their purpose was to reclaim or drain the land for economic purposes. Those same interests started to build early forms of the levees. Here's a graphic from 1919 published in the newspaper of these early landowners building up the first levees in the area to try to hold back the Columbia River. Then after Congress authorized the Flood Control Act of 1936, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was given the authority and funding to build and strengthen flood control infrastructure all around the country. And they partnered with the local drainage districts to build the sort of comprehensive levee system that we have today. Here's a map of the levee system as we know it today. The light pink lines sort of demonstrate the extent of the levees, and the red lines show the boundaries of the districts. In some cases, those boundaries align, but the political boundaries of the districts do not perfectly align with the boundaries of the levees themselves. In addition to the 27 miles of levees, we also operate and manage 12 pump stations that help to move water out from behind the levees, either to the slough or out to the river. It really is as a result of the levees and conveyance system that was built that this area has become the major industrial transportation hub that we know today. There's also just a lot at risk in this area now because of everything that's been developed. There's almost 8,000 people who live in the managed floodplain. Portland International Airport is located in the managed floodplain, along with 3 major highways that go through the managed floodplain. There's also about 59,000 people who have jobs at the 2,500 businesses that are located in the managed floodplain behind the levees. Massive amount of property, assessed property value in the area. Our second largest source of drinking water in Oregon is located directly behind the levees, along with about 2,000 acres of restored natural spaces and parks. Our risk is also real, very real in the area. This graphic here demonstrates sort of the last 100 years, a little bit more than 100 years of flooding along the Columbia River in the greater Portland area. And just to point out some big floods that you may have heard of, the May 30th, June 1st, 1948 was the Vanport flood, when a portion of the levee system, a railroad embankment that runs along the western edge of the levee system, breached after holding back water for a couple of weeks. And that flood led to the just decimation, destruction of the city of Vanport and displacement of over 18,000 people. More recently was the 1996 flood, which fortunately our levees were able to withstand that flood, although the damage was pretty extensive both to our levee system and throughout the Columbia Basin. We are facing a number of challenges operating as 4 independent, separate, century-old government agencies. The infrastructure has been well maintained based on what the drainage districts are responsible for and what they can do, but the infrastructure is old. And as we know, infrastructure needs to be upgraded and improved over time. Also, because it's old, there's just unclear ownership, unclear responsibilities, and we simply weren't set up to manage a large urban flood safety system. The system was also designed at a very different time for a very different landscape, and the changing of the landscape over time, the development, the added asphalt, concrete in the area has all put stress on the infrastructure and the operations and continues to do so. We also, following Hurricane Katrina and Superstorm Sandy, saw shifting and changing of federal safety standards for levees that put a lot more responsibility and significantly more cost on the local levee operators like the drainage districts. That combined with sort of this outdated governance and funding structure that we're operating under has really created a situation where you've got 4 separate government entities maintaining one system without the resources to do so at the sort of our modern day needs. And this is what, for this reason, in 2012, Levee Ready Columbia was formed. It's a partnership of a number of private, public, and nonprofit organizations that have come together to focus on meeting the federal safety standards and keeping the levees accredited and maintaining our access to the National Flood Insurance Program, and also to work on making sure that we can take care of the infrastructure over time. So when Levee Ready Columbia came together, their initial objective was to investigate the system and identify if there was anything wrong with it that would keep us from being able to recertify the system to maintain federal accreditation. And what they discovered was that there was actually a lot more wrong with the system than we anticipated. And so that has led to several large initiatives. One is upgrading our infrastructure, modernizing it for modern to present standards. And to do that, the Levee Ready Columbia partners in the drainage districts worked closely with the Oregon congressional delegation to request U.S. Army Corps of Engineers feasibility study, which is really the first step in the Corps' process to complete major infrastructure projects. And it's really the only, well, it's the best pathway available to secure federal funding for levee projects. This feasibility study was designated in 2018 and was completed in 2021. So now we have what's referred to as the final chief's report, which details kind of how the system was originally designed, what it was designed for, findings associated with the feasibility study, and includes a recommended plan to strengthen and promote more resiliency over the next 50 years. And so now that we've got that Chief's report, we are currently working on getting the report and the recommended plan authorized through congressional passage of the Water Resources Development Act, which is the act that directs the Corps Civil Works program. And so we'll be working on authorizing the project through WRDA 2022. And then we will also be working simultaneously to secure the necessary appropriations so that the Corps can move this project forward. If the project is authorized and funded, we can expect that the federal government will provide up to 65% of the cost, which is currently estimated at $130 million total. So we're looking at a 65% federal cost share, and we'll need to provide 35% here at the local level. The other major effort, in addition to sort of upgrading and improving our infrastructure to meet federal safety standards and modern day standards, is to address our governance and funding structure and to really upgrade and modernize that part of our work. And so Levee Ready Columbia did a couple of years of work to research the options that are available and to study different governance and funding structures, and ultimately went to our local state representatives, who at the time that was Speaker Kotek that we went to, and talked about what options were available. And the speaker recommended that rather than trying to make something fit that didn't work particularly well or didn't quite fit, that we work with the legislature to create a new special district specifically for this purpose. And so Speaker Kotek and Senator Lou Frederick, Senator Lori Monis Anderson, and then Representative, but now Senator Chris Gorsuch really helped lead the charge to put this new district in place with the passage of Senate Bill 431 in 2019. The new district currently is, standing up and operating alongside the 4 drainage districts. The 4 drainage districts, in addition to basically taking on the work of the drainage districts around maintaining the levees, providing drainage management in the area, and emergency response related to floods, the legislature also gave this new urban flood safety water quality district an expanded mission that focused on integrating environmental benefit and improved water quality, fish and wildlife habitat, and landscape resilience into its work, preparing for and adapting to climate change, which is really important as we think about flooding. We also are mandated to promote equity and social justice in all of the district's operations, and to provide the public with information about the cultural history of the area as a part of the work of the new district. So standing up a whole new government agency and getting rid of 4 in the process is a big lift. And that is where a big portion of our work is focused right now. So another thing to note about this new district is the boundaries have changed significantly. So the district will still primarily provide services in the area where the drainage districts are currently located, here kind of shown with the red lines. but the actual district boundaries align with the urban growth boundary, which of Multnomah County, which is set by Metro. And that really represents the area in which the largest portion of the economic benefit is experienced because of the economic activity that goes on behind the levees. So this district, we're working on a 5-year plan to get it sort of fully stood up and the drainage districts fully dissolved. The initial board of the district is in place and working on putting together the funding structure. Only once the operating funding structure is in place can the initial board of the district call for the election of a permanent board. It's a smaller board of 5 elected board members and 4 appointed board members that will then take over the ongoing oversight of the district. And it's that board that can call for the dissolution of the 4 drainage districts. Once the permanent board calls for the dissolution of the 4 drainage districts, the drainage districts will have about a year to finish that consolidation and dissolution process. So this is a graphic demonstrating kind of how we're thinking about the next 5 years and this transition from the century-old governance and funding structures that we currently operate under to something new, better, more modern, and more efficient. And so we're really thinking about this in 2 phases. There's the kind of formalizing the purpose of the new district and how we fund it. How do we pay for the work and what is the work? And then there's the program development and implementation phase, which will come after we put a new revenue structure in place and have started the dissolution of the drainage districts. This graphic here represents a 18-month timeline of what we're thinking. This is a very ambitious plan and very aggressive. It also is pending legislative approval of House Bill 4067, which is currently being considered in the Oregon legislature. What this bill does is help address some issues with the sequencing that were in the original, unintentionally put into the original statute that we've sort of discovered as we've worked to hammer out how we're going to put this new revenue structure in place. So the work over the next 18 months really is going to be focused on how do we evaluating and selecting a operating revenue structure and putting that operating revenue structure in place. We also assume, based on a lot of research and a lot of discussions that have happened over the last 5 to 7 years, that we are going to be looking at referring a geo bond to the voters of the district to request somewhere, potentially around 100 million in capital improvements that will both help us meet the local match for the federal project with the Army Corps of Engineers, will also help us complete projects that we need to take on and finish in order to maintain our accreditation with FEMA. And then there will be some other needs that likely are included in that bond measure. So over the next year, we'll be working to sort of stand up this new revenue structure and put a geo bond package together and refer it to the voters. The goal right now is to put all of that on the May 2020, or put the geo bond on the May 2023 ballot, and to call for the election of the permanent board on the May 2023 ballot. Remember, the permanent board has to be elected and in place in order to call for the dissolution of the drainage districts. And in order for the permanent board to be elected, we need to have an operating revenue structure in place, and we will need to have collected at least $1 of that new operating revenue structure. So there's some sequencing issues that we need to work through here. So sort of summarize, what our current current areas of focus are, we are, obviously very focused and committed to continuing our operations and emergency management work that the drainage districts have done for the last century. We're working on passing House Bill 4067, which we will know in the next week or so whether or not we were successful. If we were successful, then we will be working on this sort of May 2023 timeline for setting all of our revenue structures up. We're working on developing a revenue model which will help us evaluate both different revenue structures, but also different costs associated with the work of the district. We're developing a GeoBond package to refer to the voters. We are preparing to dissolve 4 century-old drainage districts and move all of their assets and liabilities and staff and policies and procedures over to this new district. We're working predominantly with stakeholders on program development. What does the work of the new district look like, especially around the new mandates, around integrating the environment in our work and integrating climate change, climate adaptation, cultural history, and equity and social justice. And then, of course, we, as with many public agencies, are doing a lot of work around equity, diversity, equity, inclusion right now, both improving the way that we do contracting and hiring, and thinking about what that looks like as we try to integrate equity into the development of these new programs. So we have a lot of needs right now, which is why we're looking to bring on either a firm, a couple different firms, individuals, teams of people to help on the communications front. This really includes kind of 3 big buckets of work as we describe it. There's a lot of complementary communications engagement work that needs to happen alongside our efforts to put this whole new government in place and create a revenue structure and pass a GeoBond. As a government agency, we will not be campaigning for that GeoBond once it's on the ballot, but we will do everything up to the referral and filing process, and we'll need support all along that way. We also recognize there's a need for some pretty extensive public opinion research to support this work. We have, our own goals, and there's external drivers, and we have our own goals for stakeholder planning and process design, facilitation, and engagement. We recognize there is targeted outreach work that we'll need to do along the way, as well as a number of people who don't know that this infrastructure exists, that these districts exist. And so there's a significant amount of education, awareness building that we need to do to support all of these other efforts that I've been talking about. So to focus in on the RFP itself, which again is available on our website at mcdd.org and is also available at the state's website, Oregon Buys. We're looking for proposals from qualified individuals, firms, teams, of teams of qualified folks around strategic communications, public opinion research, community engagement, and what we're calling process design and facilitation. And the goal of this RFP is at a minimum to produce at least one 5-year on-call contract for all the services that we've listed, basically from pages 8 to 10 in the RFP document. So I'm going to talk about each of these subsections of services. I think that a couple of things just to note. The goal of this RFP is to have some flexibility around how many contracts we issue and how we issue those contracts. So it could be that we issue one for all of the services, or we issue several under each category. So as a potential proposer, I would encourage you to think about what services you can offer and to focus on the criteria and submitting a proposal that demonstrates how you could deliver that, deliver the services and meet the criteria laid out in the RFP document. Teams are definitely encouraged to apply, but they are not required. So if you, for instance, provide graphic design services, we would certainly encourage you to partner up with a firm that can do more of our kind of messaging and branding needs on the strategy side so that your proposal is more comprehensive. That's not required. So you can definitely submit a proposal for more specific services listed within the RFP, and we'll be evaluating based on the criteria that is set in the RFP document. So to focus in on the categories of services, we have a lot of work that we need to do in the coming years. And one of the really central pieces of that is the public opinion research, which I'll talk about next, in order to help us really tell our story and hone our messaging and develop the products and plans and tools to convey sort of central story about what it is we're doing and why it matters to people. Messaging is going to be a big focus in the coming months and year. Another question we have is around the brands. We've got 4 different drainage districts, Levy, Ready, Columbia, and this new urban flood safety water quality district. And we need to determine how best to operate with all these different entities still established, and as we transition to the new urban flood safety water quality district, which probably needs a better name that's easier to remember, that has a more memorable acronym. So that will be part of the work. And we're really looking for an individual or team that can come in and kind of help us to develop a strategy and a plan to really do the necessary research, do the necessary outreach to put our messaging framework in place to tackle this branding question, and then to create the complementary products that are needed, whether we decide that's a new website or a new logo, new collateral, whatever it is. We also have, we anticipate that issues will come up, that there might be crisis, or probably not, maybe crisis is too strong of a word, but that there'll be issues that we will need board member and staff coaching on, presentations, materials, talking points, that sort of support. We also are looking for a firm or individuals or teams of individuals that can help us to put together and execute awareness building campaigns to help people understand this new district and the infrastructure that we manage and why it's important. As a part of that, but also independently, there's media relations work that we anticipate will be a part of our strategy, and that will also need to handle on a reactive basis. Within this category, there's some really specific technical needs that we currently need. We have 2 websites that we currently operate, and we need to continue to have programming support available to keep these websites operating as long as we need them to. We expect that whomever we contract with will have the ability, will have graphic design ability, but we also hope that we can use that as needed when other projects or specific needs come up. We also anticipate that the new district will potentially take on a pretty extensive mail program, potentially in the coming year. to communicate around what it is they're doing, since we recognize that putting a new operating revenue structure in place is pretty significant. And then there's just a lot more people in this district that should be informed about what it is that we're doing and why it matters to them. So the estimated 5-year budget across all the districts here is a maximum of about $1 million. That doesn't mean that we will necessarily spend that much, but that is sort of our estimated hope for amount. It's dependent on appropriations from our board, which happens annually. The next category of services is really focused on public opinion research, and we need a firm, company, an individual to come in and coordinate with staff and our communications consultant team to help us really put a plan and a strategy in place, at least for the next year, if not longer. And then once we have that strategy in place, we'll look to this contractor or set of contractors to execute all the necessary steps to complete the plan that we put in place. So survey design, data collection, doing the qualitative research, whether that's qual boards or in-person focus groups, phone call, whatever it is that we decide we need to accomplish, we need somebody who is going to design it, facilitate it, collect the data, and report back and make recommendations on the key findings. Our current estimated 5-year budget across all 5 districts is about $355,000, and that again will be subject to appropriations by our board. The last category is about stakeholder and community engagement. We also talk about it as process design and facilitation. One thing we need for sure is on-call facilitation support with 5 different boards, 6 different boards operating, and lots of decision makers, lots of stakeholders, and lots of needs floating around. There is a pretty consistent need to design a thoughtful and engaging process, and to help facilitate groups of decision makers to a decision. We, by nature, are a very collaborative bunch. We've been making decisions for the last 5+ years, largely on a consensus-based approach. And so the need for facilitation arises pretty regularly. We also are looking for someone that will really help to come up with a central strategy and plan around the new district and the work that we're doing. We'll expect this person or team to work with our communications consultants, our economic and financial consultants, and probably any other team of consultants that is necessary to help us put together a realistic, targeted, culturally appropriate engagement strategy, and then to go out and execute it. One place that we're really interested in getting support is just building up our capacity for outreach to build more engagement with our work and what we're doing. We also expect that this contractor or set of contractors will take on the work associated with doing stakeholder and community engagement. So whether that's planning events, online surveys, other kinds of engagement activities, we anticipate that the contractors that are brought on for this service category will be able to deliver kind of full suite of engagement. The other piece that we're really interested in and focused on as an organization or set of organizations is improving and centering, improving our relationships with and centering the voices of BIPOC communities. Especially, we think a lot about the communities that have been impacted by decisions about the floodplain over the last century plus, and then also those who have been marginalized from those discussions. And so if that's definitely something that will encourage contractors to highlight within their proposal, how you can support us in doing that work. So 5-year budget for this bucket of work is a maximum of $415,000, including kind of event production, event and meeting costs, products, printing, all the things that go along with doing good, thoughtful engagement work. With that, I am going to wrap up. We really appreciate your time and your attention on this. If you have any questions or needs, please contact our procurement officer, Jim Canoff, at jcanoff, K-A-N-O-F-F, at MCDD